I think that we live in a society that has always been discriminatory. People discriminate in all aspects of life, from someone's car color to someone's skin color. We also treat people differently according to our preferences. Therefore, when there is a large group of people that share the same culture and identity, people that do not share their identity are the ones that are treated differently. These people are encouraged to assimilate into the big group of people because they think that in that way they will be treated equally. There are many different examples of discrimination in society towards people that do not share the same identity as the larger group, such as in the European immigrants to America, Australian Aborigines, the pre-Columbian culture in Ecuador when the Inca Empire arrived, and in multiple occasions towards the Jews. For example, Jews' assimilation took power from the end of the 19th century until the World War II in most East European cities. For assimilated Jews, the assimilation was desirable and necessary, because it was the only way they could succeed in a society that despised Jews. Most of the population, even the government itself, discriminated and despised Jews, and they refused to accept and respect Jews. In fact, at the end of the 19th century, the political anti-Semitism took force, making the Jews' position even worse. Jews, once they were assimilated, society started to accept Jews and respect them. After Jews saw the good changes that brought their assimilation, they thought that it was the best option to live in a good life, making it a solution to the emancipation and integration of Jews. In order to make this a reality, they tried to persuade non-assimilated Jews that their customs and habits were a limitation in their life, that they should eliminate their culture if they don't want to continue being despised by everyone. Before World War I, in Russia and Poland, there were famous programs that promoted the disappearance of the Jewish distinctiveness by creating Western-style synagogues instead of traditional ones, or by providing education and knowledge of non-Jewish languages. Something similar has occurred in many different countries with people that do not share the same identity as the country's identity. Therefore, I consider that not all members of society can be treated equally if they do not share the same identity, because we live in a society that has always been discriminatory and mean towards the minority group. Thus, I think that it's impossible to have a concrete salad bowl which says that when people migrate, they do not lose their culture, they retain it and live in harmony with the culture of the country they immigrated.
I disagree with you, Karen, because I think that people can be treated equally in a society where they don't share the same identity, since identities are constructed on the basis of various traits and experiences individuals live and receive. Many of those characteristics are open to different interpretations, such as race. Skin color is an important marker of identity in many societies, but in others it is of minimal importance. Religion is something we must take into consideration because when people openly practice their religion and culture, they are showing part of their identity. Therefore, I think that the theory of the salad bowl, in which everything mixes together, but each ingredient retains its own identity, it is possible.
I agree with you, Tomás, because I also think that people can be treated in the same way, but it depends a lot of what is the ideology of that society. There are a lot of societies throughout the world, and the majority of them think differently. This happens because everyone around the world has a different identity and some of them don't approve others' identity and culture. For example, Australia, before the arrival of Europeans, was inhabited by natives called Aborigines. The natives were subject of extreme discrimination by Australians, the whites, and they were not considered as citizens. This is why after World War II, Australian government issued certificates for those Aborigines that wanted to be treated as equal citizens, which meant that they will be no longer a subject of discrimination. Nevertheless, in order for Aborigines to acquire these certificates, they had to leave his or her community and do not have any communication with them in order to assimilate the Australian culture. Therefore, Aborigines sacrificed their culture in order to be accepted in the Australian society to access benefits. However, I think that this is something of the past and and that now people have become more tolerant, causing people to be able to live at peace in the same place without being discriminated or marginalized. In fact, there are many organizations that help immigrants take care of them and make society accept them.
I disagree with Tomás and Sebastián because we do live in a society with different kind of people, with different ways of thinking, but I believe that it is very difficult for a minority group to be accepted into a larger group with a different identity. For example, if an atheist family move into a really religious community, the ones who will be discriminated will be the atheist family because the community, which is the largest group, have other beliefs. Also, when mountain Jews started to arrive in the early 90s, people discriminate them because they were described as a community of criminals. Nevertheless, mountain Jews start to have social acceptation by 1970 because the majority of them have assimilated into the broader Israeli culture by speaking more frequently Hebrew than their original language, which is Judeo-Tat. They no longer dress their traditional clothes. Instead, they wear modern clothes that most modern Jews use. Mountain Jews also are forgetting activities that they used to love. Now they have important jobs in the modern society in areas such as business, education, politics, laws, industry. They have been unconsciously obligated to assimilate in the Israeli culture in order to integrate themselves in society.
Now that we are doing this interesting debate, I came to the conclusion that Karen and Sofia have a point. I consider that identities are inherent in social life, whether part of a conflict or not. Certain qualities of identities contribute significantly to the intractability of conflicts in people. The importance of an identity is another quality that affects its contribution to the persistence of a conflict, in this case discrimination. People in groups have multiple identities, but identities are not all equally significant to them. Conflicts related to identities have a tendency to persist in life. Many other attributes of identities affect the way of conflicts are conducted, mainly to the destruction of values. Obviously, the targets of such characterization will reject them and may subsequently reciprocate them. Because of this rage caused by discrimination, oppressed ones are tempted to fall apart from hands of social pressure. In this case, we're talking about assimilation. Extreme characterization of other groups can contribute to a conflict where moral principles are not given place. This may occur when the one group's identity is fashioned or built in opposition to another. For example, during the Cold War, an important aspect of American identity for many people in the United States was to be anti-communist because this way they belonged into a group.
I think that identity can affect the way society thinks about you, but it doesn't make the society discriminate you. Identity is all that represents you, and you constantly build your own identity. Discriminate people because of their identity is something that doesn't have sense, because every single one of us has a different identity. Discrimination has caused wars, and the majority of the people have realized that everybody is equal and that discrimination doesn't lead you to any place that is safe. It's really important for every person to have a different identity, because if everyone has the same identity or personality, we will be like robots, and we don't want that. We can see how important is identity for everyone and how this shouldn't be a reason of discrimination.
After this really interesting debate, I came up with the conclusion that Sebastian and Tomás have a point and they kind of changed my mind with the arguments that they gave. Our society has gone through so many things that we have learned how to live together with other people.
I think that people with privilege are able to create a system that protects their lifestyle from discrimination and criticism. Therefore, people that do not have those privileges cannot adapt into that system unless they assimilate into something that they are not. However, with this debate, I came to the conclusion that each individual has a different identity. Therefore, what people are really doing in order to be in society is called conformism. This means that people adapt attitudes, behavior, dress of the group to which he or she belongs. Everyone does that because everyone is different. The human has always wanted to belong in a group. That is why the human conforms in order to feel accepted. Nevertheless, each individual has their inner identity, their true identity. So sometimes there are people who are not afraid of showing their identity, and there are some communities or countries that are tolerant in view of these kinds of situations. That is when the salad bowl occurs.